next speaker is a Canada Research Chair in Health, Law and Policy, a professor in the Faculty of Law and the School of Public Health, and Research Director of the Health Law Institute at the University of Alberta. His research on topics like stem cells, genetics, research ethics, the public representations of science, and public health policy has allowed him to publish over 350 academic articles. He has won numerous academic and writing awards and is a Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada and the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences. He's the host and co-host of the award-winning documentary TV show, A User's Guide to Cheating Death. And his name is Timothy Caulfield. Welcome, Timothy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this incredibly important summit. Yes, I am going to talk about misinformation. It is an incredibly difficult situation that we live in right now. There is misinformation absolutely everywhere. In fact, it's been called an infodemic, and it is an infodemic. We are permeated with misinformation from all these different sources. And you know what, you guys? It's stressing us out. It's really freaking us out. And evidence consistently tells us that this is actually the case. So what I want to do today is I want to talk to you about this misinformation. I want to talk to you about what we can do about it. And hopefully, I can energize everyone involved with this event to become part of the answer. There really is misinformation absolutely everywhere. There's been misinformation about COVID, the source of COVID, right? The idea that it's a bioweapon, or that it came from a comet. I don't know if you heard that one. There's been rumors that it was caused by 5G technology. There's all these crazy ideas about how to cure yourself. In fact, we've gone from 5G to drinking pee. Have you guys heard this one? Don't do this, by the way. No evidence this works. People are suggesting that if you drink your own pee, you can cure COVID. And of course, there has been so much misinformation about vaccines. The idea that vaccines will change your DNA. No, it won't. That it will cause infertility. No, it won't. But this kind of misinformation is having a real impact. Now, the good news, a growing number of Canadians recognize the problem of misinformation. Look at this number, 96%. This was a very recent survey done by StatCan that found that 96% of Canadians, understand that they see misinformation almost daily. This should be 100%, by the way. We're seeing that much misinformation out there. It is absolutely ridiculous. And what kind of misinformation do people is having an influence on individuals? Well, look at this number. This is one of my favorite examples of how absurd it has gotten. 28%. What is that? 28% of Americans believe the hardcore Bill Gates conspiracy theory. 28%. So what is that? This is the idea that Bill Gates started the pandemic in order to force vaccination so he can put microchips in us, so he can follow us around. Never mind that we all carry supercomputers with us. If he wanted to follow us, he could probably do that. But 28% believe that. That really demonstrates the impact of misinformation and the degree to which really fringe ideas have been kind of normalized. Okay. And we also know that this misinformation is stressing us out. There's this really interesting body of evidence that suggests exactly that. And not only is that bad for our mental health, and I'm going to come back to that at the end, but we know that this stress, the sort of frantic information environment, has caused us also to be fooled by the misinformation more often. It makes it more difficult for us to tease out what's real and what's not real. And where is this misinformation coming from? Well, it's largely, not entirely, but largely a social media phenomenon. Again, a growing body of evidence to back up exactly this. Yes, it's coming from other sources, from friends and family and from the traditional news sources, although conventional media has done a pretty good job here, you guys. It is largely a social media phenomenon. In fact, there was an interesting study from McGill last summer that found that if you get your information from social media, so from Facebook or from Twitter, you're more likely to be misinformed and more likely to believe the misinformation. Another study, again from the United States, found that if you get your information from Facebook, you're more likely to misinform. They looked at over 7,000 bits of misinformation, kind of traced back the history, and found that over 4,000 of them had as their source Facebook. Think about that the next time your crazy relative sends you something from Facebook. And look at this number, 37.9%. So this was a really interesting study from Cornell University. And these researchers looked at over 1 million bits of misinformation, 1.1, I believe. And they found that 37.9% of all of that misinformation had some connection to the former, I love saying former, the former President Trump. Isn't that incredible? And that's really important because that reminds us that yes, prominent individuals can play a really significant role here, but also it's us spreading it, right? It's us spreading the misinformation. So we have to figure out how to stop that. Do you see this number down here? This one's really depressing for me. This study also found that of all those bits of misinformation, so over 1 million, only 16.4% of it was fact-checked, was debunked, was corrected. We got to do better than that, you guys. We got to get out there. We got to do more debunking. And of course, this is having an adverse impact on vaccination uptake. You know, we've been following this very, very closely at the Institute. And the Canadians' acceptance of vaccination, intention to vaccinate, has kind of gone on an interesting ride. A year ago, when people were just talking about a hypothetical vaccine, intention to vaccinate was super high. And that just kind of deteriorated over the year, almost entirely, I think, because of misinformation. Now we're seeing it go up again. It's going up really nicely. And I think that's two things. It's the great science, incredible science around these vaccines. But also, I think it's good science communication, but we need more of it, you guys. The data still isn't great. We need more Canadians to be excited about getting vaccinated. And in fact, there's an interesting study from the UK that found that over 6% of that hesitancy, and that sounds like a little amount, but it's not, it's huge. Over 6% of that hesitancy is caused by the current spreading of misinformation. And the other fascinating phenomenon that's happening, you guys, is increasingly, this misinformation is about ideology. You know, that you hear words like consent and liberty and choice, all intuitively appealing ideas, but people that are pushing misinformation, especially around vaccines, will use that in order to slide in bad science. So be wary of that. Is this really an ideological push, or is this something that is grounded in science? Okay, so all this misinformation out there doing real harm, causing hospitalizations, it's causing deaths, you guys. It's leading to more stigma and discrimination. It is having an adverse impact on health and science policy. And it's just adding to this chaotic information environment. It is making it more difficult to tease out what's real and what's not real. So what can we do about it? How can we respond? What's the answer? Well, the good news, you guys, debunking works. It works. So let's get out there and use good science to counter the baloney. So what is good science? You know, how do you do this? Well, you go to trusted sources. You talk about the body of evidence. You go to the World Health Organization and PHAC and the CDC. And the other thing that you do, this is so important, is you highlight the rhetorical tricks that are used to push the misinformation. So good science, right? Good science, and highlight the rhetorical tricks, the leaps in logic that are used to push the misinformation. You do that, you can have a real impact. The other thing you should do, you guys, is be nice. Sometimes that can be hard. But here's some other things I want you guys to think about. I want you guys to think, just be aware of the impact of this misinformation. Be aware of all the things that I've just talked about. And research tells us if you do that, you can have an impact. The other thing you want to do is you want to adopt critical thinking skills. This sounds scary, but it really is very simple. Just ask yourself things like this. What kind of evidence was it? was it just a testimonial, or is it based on a trustworthy body of evidence? And then to always ask yourself, are they selling something? Are they selling a product? Are they selling an ideology? Are they selling a brand? You do those things. Be aware of the problem. Try to implement critical thinking skills. And the other thing that's so important, you guys, always think about the science-informed basics. Think about the big picture. Think about the big picture. Don't get pulled into the vortex of conflicting details. Think about the picture, big picture. And when we're talking about vaccines, vaccines work. They are like, the current vaccines are like the moon landing. The evidence is incredible. The science is so incredible. That's the big picture. Don't get pulled into the details. And I think one of the most important things you can do, you guys, is you can pause, you can chill, you can relax. That's so important. There's really fascinating research that tells us that if we can just nudge individuals to pause a little bit, we can have a real impact on the spread of misinformation. So what do I mean by that? What do we mean about pausing? Well, this is research done by actually a colleague of mine, Gordon Pennycook, and he found that if we can get people to just think about accuracy when they're looking at something on social media, just pause, chill, they're less likely to spread misinformation. And that makes sense. The social media is such a frantic place, right? It doesn't really invite reflection. Well, let's invite reflection, right? Let's pause, let's chill, let's relax just a little bit. And you guys, research also tells us this is really good for our mental health. So give yourself a break from the noise. And lastly, you guys, last thing I want to say, it's so important to go to those trusted voices, those trusted sources. And I've got a resource for you right now that can help. It's called Science Up First, hashtag Science Up First. This is an initiative that I started with a group of amazing scientists, research, public health experts, science communication experts, hashtag Science Up First. You can find it on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, soon on TikTok. And what we do is we try to share credible information, and we want you to become part of the team. This is independent scientists just trying to fight the noise on social media. Come on, join the team and help us. Hashtag Science Up First. And I'm going to end there. I'm going to end there with a big thank you to C.A.R.P. to have the opportunity to talk about this really, really important topic. And I want to end with my two favorite words, you guys. Go science.
Go science. All right, thanks so much, Timothy. Now, before you go, I have a question for you. Would you consider the daily and often inconsistent news we've been receiving around AstraZeneca, that vaccine, an infodemic?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know what? I think it's better to categorize that as a good example of how difficult science communication can be. I think AstraZeneca, and to some degree, some of the public health officials have not done a great job communicating the science. This goes back to what I said about big picture, because big picture, if you look at the data, if you look at the safety data, it's impressive. It's impressive, but we got pulled into this conflicting information about some of the details.
Yeah.
So look, the data that we have now is really impressive. And even just today, we've got more comforting information about AstraZeneca. But the big picture about all the vaccines, this is really good news, you guys, is they're all very impressive. They're all very impressive, both from an efficacy perspective and also from a safety perspective.